Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Library. Tonight, we are going to embark on a gentle journey through the fascinating landscape of human nature. This is not a lesson or a test. There are no answers you need to remember. This is simply a slow, calming exploration of what it means to be human, told in the softest voice science can offer. So settle into your pillows. Let your breathing slow, and allow these words to wash over you like a warm tide. Understanding humans begins with understanding minds. Not the brain itself, though that remarkable organ plays its part, but the invisible theatre of thought that unfolds behind our eyes every waking moment. The human mind is like a river that never stops flowing, carrying fragments of memory, flickers of emotion, whispers of intention, all moving together in a current we can barely see. Scientists who study the mind call their field cognitive psychology, and they view human thinking as a kind of information processing system. Imagine your mind as a vast library, where information enters through your senses, gets sorted and stored in memory, and then retrieved when needed to guide your actions. This comparison to a computer emerged in the 1950s, when researchers realized that both minds and machines take in data, transform it, and produce outputs. But unlike any computer, the human mind does something far more mysterious. It creates meaning. It feels. It wonders. When you perceive the world around you, your brain is not simply recording reality like a camera. Instead, it is actively constructing an experience from fragments of sensory input. Light waves enter your eyes and become colors. Vibrations in the air become sounds. Chemical molecules become scents. Your brain weaves all these threads together into a seamless experience of being present in a moment. And yet, what you experience is not the world itself, but your mind's interpretation of it. This act of perception happens so quickly, so automatically, that we rarely notice the extraordinary processing taking place. Your brain filters out most of the information flooding your senses, attending only to what seems relevant or novel. This is why you can ignore the feeling of your clothes against your skin until someone mentions it, and suddenly you notice again. Your attention is a spotlight, and what falls outside that beam fades into the background, unprocessed and forgotten. Memory is another cornerstone of human cognition, and it operates in stages that researchers find endlessly fascinating. First comes sensory memory, a brief retention of sights and sounds, lasting only a fraction of a second. This is followed by short-term memory, where information lingers for perhaps 20 or 30 seconds, unless you actively rehearse it. Finally, some experiences make their way into long-term memory, where they can remain for a lifetime, though often transformed by time and emotion into something different from what originally happened. Human beings are not perfect recorders of experience. Our memories are reconstructed each time we recall them, subtly altered by our current feelings and beliefs. Two people witnessing the same event will remember it differently, each filtering it through their own expectations and emotions. This is not a flaw, but a feature of how human minds work. We are meaning-making creatures, not documentation machines. Language sets humans apart from almost every other species on the planet. While many animals communicate through calls, gestures, or chemical signals, human language possesses a unique quality called recursion. This means we can embed ideas within ideas, creating sentences of infinite complexity. We can say, "I think that you believe that she knows. nesting layers of thought within a single utterance. This ability to represent and manipulate abstract concepts through symbolic communication may be the most distinctive feature of human cognition. The origins of language remain somewhat mysterious, hidden in the mists of prehistory. Researchers believe language emerged somewhere between 50,000 and 200,000 years ago, though the exact timeline is debated. Early human communication likely began with simple gestures and vocalizations, gradually evolving into more sophisticated forms. Some theorists propose that language and tool-making evolved together, both requiring similar cognitive abilities for planning and sequential thinking. One fascinating aspect of language is that children learn it almost effortlessly. By the age of 5, most children have mastered the complex grammar of their native language without formal instruction. This remarkable ability suggests that humans possess an innate capacity for language acquisition, a biological preparation that helps us absorb the linguistic patterns we hear around us. Language is not just learned, it is something human brains are designed to develop, given the right environmental input. Throughout history, many theories attempted to explain how language first emerged. The bow wow theory suggested humans imitated animal sounds. The poo-poo theory proposed that language evolved from emotional exclamations. The yo-he-ho theory argued that rhythmic work chants became the foundation of speech. While these ideas are charming in their simplicity, modern researchers recognize that language likely emerged from multiple interacting factors, including social cooperation, cognitive evolution, and cultural transmission. Writing systems, which appeared much more recently in human history, transformed language from something ephemeral into something permanent. The earliest writing emerged around 5,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, allowing humans to preserve knowledge across generations and distances. Writing enabled the development of complex societies, legal systems, and accumulated wisdom. It allowed ideas to travel beyond the reach of any single voice, and to survive long after their authors passed away. Today, language continues to evolve at a remarkable pace, shaped by new technologies and global communication. Text messaging and social media have created novel forms of linguistic expression, with abbreviations, emojis, and internet slang constituting their own evolving dialects. The human capacity for language adaptation shows no sign of slowing. We are creatures who bend our words to fit our needs, generation after generation, without conscious effort. Emotions form another essential dimension of human experience. While other animals clearly feel emotions, human emotional life possesses a richness and complexity that shapes nearly every aspect of our behavior. Emotions are not simply reactions to events. They are adaptive systems that evolved to guide survival and social coordination. Fear alerts us to danger. Anger mobilizes us to defend ourselves. Joy reinforces behaviors that benefit us. Sadness signals loss and often elicits support from others. Neuroscientists have identified several brain structures involved in emotional processing. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped region deep within the brain, plays a crucial role in detecting threats and processing fear. The insula is involved in experiencing and recognizing emotions, particularly those related to the body, such as disgust. The prefrontal cortex helps regulate emotions, allowing us to modulate our feelings rather than being entirely swept away by them. One of the most remarkable human capacities is empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. Empathy allows us to connect across the boundaries of individual experience, to feel another person's joy or pain as if it were our own. This capacity for emotional resonance forms the foundation of human social life, enabling cooperation, compassion, and moral reasoning. Research in social neuroscience reveals that empathy involves both emotional and cognitive components. Effective empathy allows us to automatically share another person's emotional state. When we see someone in pain, regions of our own brain associated with pain processing become active, as if we ourselves were experiencing discomfort. Cognitive empathy, on the other hand, involves taking another person's perspective and understanding their mental state. This requires more deliberate mental effort, but allows for deeper understanding of others' experiences. Mirror neurons, discovered in the 1990s, provided a neurological basis for understanding how we connect with others. These specialized brain cells fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing the same action. When you watch someone reach for a cup, your mirror neuron system activates as if you yourself were reaching. This neural mirroring may underlie our ability to understand intentions, learn through observation, and feel what others feel. Empathy develops gradually throughout childhood and continues to mature into adulthood. Young children show early signs of empathic concern, becoming distressed when they see others in pain. As they grow, their ability to take others' perspectives becomes more sophisticated, allowing for more nuanced social understanding. Interestingly, research suggests that empathic responses may actually increase from adolescence through older adulthood, challenging the notion that social cognitive abilities inevitably decline with age. The chemical foundations of social bonding also play a crucial role in human connection. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, facilitates attachment between parents and children, romantic partners, and even friends. This neurochemical modulates trust, generosity, and empathic concern. When oxytocin is administered in research settings, people become more attentive to social cues and more willing to cooperate with others. The quality of our social connections even influences how our brains respond to oxytocin, suggesting that social experience and neurochemistry interact in complex ways. Human decision-making represents another fascinating dimension of our psychology. For much of history, philosophers and economists assumed that humans made decisions rationally, carefully weighing costs and benefits to maximize utility. However, research beginning in the 1970s revealed that human judgment often deviates from strictly rational models in systematic and predictable ways. Psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman pioneered the study of heuristics and biases, demonstrating that people rely on mental shortcuts when making judgments under uncertainty. These heuristics are not signs of laziness or stupidity. Rather, they are adaptive strategies that allow us to make quick decisions with limited information. In many situations, heuristics serve us well, but they can also lead to systematic errors in judgment. The availability heuristic, for example, leads us to estimate the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. If you can quickly recall instances of airplane accidents because they receive extensive media coverage, you might overestimate the danger of flying, even though statistically it is much safer than driving. Our judgments are influenced by what is mentally available to us, not necessarily by what is objectively probable. Another powerful bias is the anchoring effect, where initial information disproportionately influences subsequent judgments. If you are asked whether the population of a city is greater or less than 5 million before estimating the actual population, your estimate will be pulled toward that anchor of 5 million, even if it was chosen arbitrarily. Our minds latch onto initial reference points and have difficulty adjusting sufficiently from them. Confirmation bias describes our tendency to seek out and interpret information in ways that confirm our existing beliefs. We notice evidence that supports what we already think while overlooking or dismissing contradictory information. This bias helps explain why people with different political views can look at the same evidence and reach opposite conclusions. Each person's existing beliefs act as a lens that colors how they interpret new information. Human decision-making also involves two distinct systems of thinking. System 1 operates automatically and intuitively, making rapid judgments based on pattern recognition and emotional responses. This is the system that allows you to instantly recognize a friend's face or sense danger in an unfamiliar situation. System 2, in contrast, operates more slowly and deliberately, engaging in logical analysis and conscious reasoning. Complex mathematical problems or careful ethical deliberations require System 2 thinking. These two systems often work together harmoniously, with System 1 providing quick assessments and System 2 stepping in when more careful analysis is needed. However, System 1 sometimes produces confident judgments that turn out to be wrong, and we may not engage System 2 to check our intuitions. This explains why even highly educated people fall prey to cognitive biases. Our fast, intuitive thinking can lead us astray before our deliberate reasoning has a chance to intervene. Understanding these aspects of human cognition has practical implications. Recognizing our susceptibility to biases can make us more humble about our judgments and more willing to consider alternative perspectives. It can help us design better decision-making processes, incorporating checks against our natural tendencies toward error. And it reminds us that being human means accepting that our minds, for all their remarkable capabilities, are imperfect instruments for understanding reality. Cooperation represents one of the most distinctive features of human social life. While many species cooperate to some degree, humans cooperate at a scale and level of complexity unmatched in the animal kingdom. We form societies of millions of people, most of whom we will never meet. Yet, we depend on intricate webs of mutual cooperation for our survival and flourishing. The evolution of human cooperation presents a puzzle for evolutionary theory. Natural selection typically favors behaviors that benefit an individual's own reproductive success. Yet humans routinely help strangers, contribute to public goods, and sometimes sacrifice their own interests for the benefit of their group. How did such widespread cooperation evolve when more selfish strategies might seem advantageous? Cultural evolution provides part of the answer. Humans possess a unique capacity for social learning, allowing us to acquire knowledge, skills, and norms from others, rather than learning everything through individual trial and error. This capacity for cumulative cultural learning means that beneficial innovations can be preserved and built upon across generations. Cultural adaptations can occur much faster than genetic evolution, allowing human groups to adapt to new environments and challenges with remarkable speed. Over the last million years or so, human ancestors evolved enhanced abilities for social learning and teaching. This created the possibility for cumulative cultural evolution, where modifications and improvements accumulate over time. A child born today inherits not just genes, but an entire cultural toolkit of knowledge, practices, and technologies developed over countless generations. We stand on the shoulders of all who came before us. This capacity for cultural transmission created a new dynamic in human evolution. Different groups developed different cultural practices, and competition between groups favored those with more cooperative social norms. Groups whose members could coordinate effectively, share resources, and work together toward common goals tended to outcompete groups lacking such cooperation. This process, sometimes called cultural group selection, helps explain the evolution of human pro-social instincts. Children show remarkable cooperative tendencies from an early age. 3-year-olds will spontaneously help others achieve their goals, share resources fairly, and coordinate with partners on joint tasks. These tendencies appear to be part of our evolved psychology, shaped by millions of years in which cooperation enhanced survival and reproductive success. We are not born as purely selfish creatures who must be forced into cooperation through external incentives. Rather, we have innate inclinations toward fairness, reciprocity, and mutual aid. Social norms represent a crucial mechanism for sustaining cooperation in large groups. Norms are shared expectations about appropriate behavior, backed by the potential for social approval or disapproval. When everyone knows that certain behaviors are expected and that violations will be noticed and sanctioned, cooperation becomes easier to maintain. We conform to norms not just because we fear punishment, but also because we have internalized the sense that this is how things should be done. Human beings are intensely social creatures. We depend on others not just for physical survival, but for our psychological well-being. Social isolation is experienced as profoundly painful, and chronic loneliness has measurable effects on physical and mental health. The need for social connection appears to be as fundamental to human nature as the need for food or sleep. We are not individuals who occasionally choose to cooperate. We are fundamentally social beings whose identities are shaped by our relationships and memberships in groups. The concept of shared intentionality captures something unique about human social cognition. Unlike other primates, humans can form joint goals and work together with a sense of shared purpose. When two people collaborate on a task, they don't just coordinate their actions mechanically. They maintain a mental representation of their joint intention, each aware that the other shares the same goal. This capacity for genuine collaboration, rather than mere coordination, may be one of the key cognitive innovations that enabled human culture to flourish. Teaching and learning represent another distinctive feature of human cooperation. While some animals can learn by watching others, human teaching involves active efforts to facilitate another's learning. Parents and teachers deliberately demonstrate skills, provide feedback, approve correct actions, and disapprove mistakes. This active pedagogy greatly improves the accuracy and efficiency of cultural transmission, allowing complex knowledge to be passed reliably across generations. Prolonged childhood and adolescence in humans may have evolved in part to allow for extensive social learning. Human children remain dependent on adults for many years, during which they absorb the intricate cultural knowledge of their society. This extended period of learning enables the transmission of complex skills that would be impossible to master through individual exploration alone. Learning to hunt, to navigate social relationships, to perform ritual practices, all require patient instruction and practice over years. The archaeological record provides glimpses of how human cultural complexity has increased over time. Early stone tools made by our ancestors millions of years ago show little change over hundreds of thousands of years. But more recent human cultures show accelerating innovation, with new tools and techniques appearing and spreading much more rapidly. This acceleration reflects the power of cumulative cultural evolution, as each generation builds on the innovations of the previous one. Language, once again, plays a crucial role in human cooperation. It allows us to share information efficiently, to coordinate plans, to discuss abstract ideas, and to maintain social norms. Through language, we can learn from others' experiences without having to undergo every experience ourselves. We can transmit knowledge about distant places and times. We can negotiate agreements, tell stories that bind communities together, and pass down moral teachings. Language is not just a tool for individual expression, but a technology for social coordination. The diversity of human cultures across the globe testifies to the power of cultural evolution to generate variation. Different groups have developed different subsistence strategies, family structures, religious beliefs, artistic traditions, and moral systems. This cultural diversity is not random variation, but the result of groups adapting to different environments and historical circumstances. What works well in one context may not work in another, and cultural practices evolve to fit local conditions. At the same time, beneath this surface diversity, researchers have identified human universals, features that appear in all or nearly all human cultures. All societies have language, music, art, marriage, moral systems, and religious or spiritual beliefs. All distinguish between right and wrong behavior, care for children, and mark important life transitions with rituals. These universals suggest that while culture takes many forms, it operates within constraints set by our common human nature. Understanding human cooperation has practical importance for addressing contemporary challenges. Climate change, pandemics, resource depletion, and other global problems require unprecedented levels of international cooperation. By understanding the psychological mechanisms that support cooperation and the conditions under which it thrives or falters, we can design better institutions and social arrangements. The same cognitive capacities that allowed our ancestors to cooperate in small groups can potentially be channeled toward cooperation at global scales. Trust forms the foundation of human cooperation, particularly among strangers. In small societies where everyone knows everyone else, cooperation can be maintained through reciprocity and reputation. You help others because you expect they will help you in return. And everyone knows who can be trusted and who cannot. But in large modern societies, where we interact with countless strangers, cooperation depends on more abstract forms of trust. We trust that others will follow rules, that institutions will function fairly, and that the social fabric will hold together. This trust is not always warranted, and humans have evolved sophisticated capacities for detecting cheaters and punishing those who violate cooperative norms. We are very sensitive to unfairness and will sometimes punish free riders even at cost to ourselves. This willingness to enforce social norms, even when enforcement is costly, helps maintain cooperation in groups. It shows that our commitment to fairness is not just self-interested calculation, but involves genuine moral emotions. Morality itself can be understood as a system that evolved to support cooperation. Our sense of right and wrong, our feelings of guilt and shame, our indignation at injustice, all these emotional responses help coordinate social behavior and maintain group cohesion. Different cultures elaborate morality in different ways, emphasizing different virtues and prohibiting different vices. But the underlying function remains similar, guiding individuals toward behaviors that sustain social cooperation. Human beings are neither purely selfish nor purely altruistic. We are capable of both remarkable generosity and shocking cruelty, often toward different categories of people. We show strong favoritism toward members of our own groups, while sometimes treating outsiders with indifference or hostility. This parochialism, the tendency to cooperate more with in-group members than out-group members, likely evolved in the context of competition between cultural groups. It helped our ancestors cooperate effectively within their communities while competing against rival communities. In the modern world, this legacy of parochialism creates challenges. Tribalism, prejudice, and intergroup conflict cause immense suffering. Understanding the evolutionary origins of in-group favoritism does not excuse it, but it does help explain why such tendencies are so widespread and so difficult to overcome. By recognizing these biases in ourselves, we can work to expand our circles of concern and extend cooperation across traditional group boundaries. Identity and belonging are fundamental to human psychology. We define ourselves in large part through our group memberships, our relationships, our roles in social networks. This is not a sign of weakness or lack of individuality. Rather, it reflects the deeply social nature of human beings. We are who we are because of the communities that shaped us, the cultures that formed us, the relationships that sustain us. When we feel disconnected from others, when we lack a sense of belonging, we suffer. Research consistently shows that strong social connections contribute to happiness, health, and longevity, while loneliness and isolation are risk factors for depression, illness, and even early mortality. Our brains and bodies are designed to function best when embedded in webs of social support. To be human is to be part of a social fabric larger than ourselves. The human capacity for self-reflection sets us apart from other species. We not only think and feel, but we think about our thinking and feel about our feelings. This metacognitive ability allows us to examine our own mental states, to question our beliefs, to deliberately change our habits and attitudes. We can step back from immediate experience and consider ourselves from a more distant perspective. This capacity for self-reflection is intimately connected to consciousness itself, that mysterious property of having subjective experiences. What is it like to be you, to see through your eyes, to feel your feelings? Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness, and despite advances in neuroscience, we still lack a complete explanation for how physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective experience. Consciousness seems to involve a kind of inner spotlight that illuminates some aspects of mental life, while leaving others in darkness. You are aware of the words you are reading right now, but you are not consciously aware of the countless processes that allow you to read. The movement of your eyes, the interpretation of letter shapes, the retrieval of word meanings from memory. Most of what your brain does happens outside conscious awareness, and consciousness itself may be a relatively small window onto the vast computational machinery operating beneath the surface. Self-consciousness, the awareness of yourself as a distinct entity with a past and future, develops gradually in childhood. Very young children do not yet have a clear sense of themselves as separate individuals with their own mental states. But by around 18 months, children begin to recognize themselves in mirrors and show signs of self-awareness. By age 4 or 5, they understand that other people have beliefs and desires that may differ from their own. This theory of mind, the ability to attribute mental states to others, is crucial for navigating social life. Human beings live simultaneously in the present moment and in mental time travel. We can revisit past events in memory, re-experiencing them with varying degrees of vividness. We can project ourselves into imagined futures, previewing potential outcomes and making plans. This capacity for mental time travel allows us to learn from the past and prepare for the future. It also means we are often not fully present in the current moment, our minds wandering to other times and places. Happiness and well-being have become subjects of scientific investigation in recent decades. Researchers have identified several factors that consistently correlate with life satisfaction. Strong social relationships top the list. People with close friendships and supportive family connections report higher levels of happiness than those who are socially isolated. Meaningful work, a sense of purpose, physical health, and financial security above a basic threshold also contribute to well-being. Interestingly, many things we think will make us happy have weaker effects than we imagine. Material possessions provide brief pleasure, but we quickly adapt to new purchases and return to our baseline level of happiness. This hedonic adaptation means that constantly seeking happiness through acquisition is a treadmill that leads nowhere. Experiences, particularly shared experiences with others, tend to provide more lasting satisfaction than things. Gratitude, the practice of noticing and appreciating positive aspects of life, has been shown to enhance well-being. People who regularly reflect on what they are grateful for report higher life satisfaction and lower rates of depression. This simple practice seems to counteract our natural tendency to focus on problems and threats, directing attention instead toward the good things we often take for granted. Mindfulness, the practice of paying attention to present moment experience without judgment, has also gained empirical support as a way to enhance well-being and reduce stress. By training ourselves to observe our thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them, we can develop a different relationship to our inner experience. We need not be swept away by every emotion or belief that arises. We can notice mental events as they occur and choose how to respond. The human quest for meaning represents another fundamental aspect of our psychology. We are creatures who need to make sense of our existence, to feel that our lives matter, that our actions have significance beyond immediate survival. Different cultures provide different frameworks for meaning, through religious traditions, philosophical systems, political ideologies, or personal narratives. What unites these diverse meaning-making systems is the human need to situate individual existence within a larger story. Confronting our own mortality is part of the human condition. Unlike other animals, we know that we will someday cease to exist. This awareness of finitude can inspire anxiety and dread, but it can also motivate us to live fully, to cherish relationships, to pursue purposes larger than ourselves. Terror management theory suggests that much of human culture functions to buffer anxiety about mortality, providing symbolic immortality through religion, legacy, or identification with enduring groups and causes. Resilience, the ability to recover from adversity, varies among individuals, but can be cultivated. Some people seem to weather life's storms with remarkable equanimity, while others are more fragile in the face of setback. Research suggests that resilience involves several factors, including optimism, social support, problem-solving skills, and the ability to find meaning even in difficult circumstances. While some aspects of resilience may be influenced by genetics and early experiences, it is not fixed. People can develop greater resilience through practice and support. The human relationship with technology has become increasingly important for understanding modern human psychology. We have always been tool-using animals, but the pace of technological change has accelerated dramatically. From stone tools to agriculture, to writing, to the printing press, to electricity, to computers, to the internet, each major technological shift has transformed how humans live, work, and interact. Digital technology in particular has created novel challenges for human psychology. Social media provides unprecedented connectivity, but may also contribute to feelings of inadequacy and loneliness when we constantly compare ourselves to curated presentations of others' lives. Smartphones offer instant access to information and entertainment, but may fragment attention and reduce our capacity for sustained focus. Screen time before bed disrupts sleep patterns by suppressing melatonin production. These are all examples of how technology designed without full consideration of human psychology can have unintended effects on well-being. At the same time, technology offers tremendous possibilities for human flourishing. Access to information empowers learning. Communication technologies allow people to maintain relationships across vast distances. Medical technologies extend healthy lifespan. Assistive technologies support people with disabilities. The key is to design and use technology in ways that align with human needs and values, rather than assuming that all technological progress automatically translates to human progress. Understanding individual differences is another important dimension of human psychology. While much research focuses on average human tendencies, individuals vary enormously in personality, abilities, interests, and values. Some people are naturally extroverted, drawing energy from social interaction, while others are introverted, needing solitude to recharge. Some are conscientious and organized, while others are spontaneous and flexible. These personality differences are partly heritable and partly shaped by experience. Psychologists have identified 5 broad personality dimensions that capture much of the variation in human personality. Openness to experience reflects curiosity and imagination versus preference for routine and familiarity. Conscientiousness involves organization and self-discipline versus spontaneity and flexibility. Extroversion captures sociability and assertiveness. Agreeableness reflects cooperation and compassion. Neuroticism indicates emotional stability versus tendency toward anxiety and negative emotion. These 5 factors appear across cultures and show moderate stability across the lifespan, though personality can still change, especially during young adulthood. Intelligence represents another domain of individual differences. People vary in their cognitive abilities, and these differences have real-world consequences for educational and occupational outcomes. Intelligence is not a single thing, but involves multiple facets, including verbal ability, spatial reasoning, mathematical aptitude, memory, and processing speed. While intelligence is influenced by genetics, it is also malleable, particularly in childhood when cognitive development is most rapid. Enriched environments, good nutrition, education, and intellectual stimulation all contribute to cognitive development. The debate over nature versus nurture, whether human behavior is determined by genes or environment, has largely been resolved through recognition that both matter, and they interact in complex ways. Genes provide a range of potential outcomes, and environment determines where within that range an individual develops. Moreover, people actively shape their own environments based on genetic predispositions, creating feedback loops between nature and nurture. Epigenetics has added another layer of complexity to our understanding of how genes influence behavior. Environmental factors can alter gene expression without changing the underlying DNA sequence. Early life experiences, stress, nutrition, and other factors can leave epigenetic marks that affect how genes are turned on or off. This means that experience literally gets under our skin, affecting biology in ways that can persist across the lifespan and possibly even across generations. Developmental psychology examines how humans change across the lifespan, from infancy through old age. The infant brain is remarkably plastic, forming new neural connections at an astounding rate in response to experience. This early plasticity allows infants to learn rapidly, but also makes them vulnerable to deprivation or trauma during critical program periods of development. Childhood represents a prolonged period of learning and maturation. Children develop cognitive abilities in stages, gradually becoming able to engage in more abstract and complex reasoning. Their social understanding deepens as they learn to take others' perspectives and navigate increasingly complex social worlds. Moral reasoning develops from simple rules based on punishment and reward toward more sophisticated understanding of fairness, rights, and ethical principles. Adolescence brings dramatic changes in body, brain, and social life. The onset of puberty triggers physical maturation and also affects neural development. The adolescent brain undergoes extensive remodeling, particularly in regions involved in emotion regulation and impulse control. This combination of heightened emotional reactivity with still maturing self-regulation helps explain why adolescence can be a time of both creativity and risk-taking. Young adulthood is often a time of identity exploration, as individuals experiment with different roles, relationships, career paths, and worldviews. This emerging adulthood phase has expanded in modern societies, where economic and educational demands delay traditional markers of adult status, like stable employment and family formation. Many young people spend their 20s exploring possibilities rather than settling into fixed identities. Middle age brings stability for many people, as careers become established and family responsibilities take center stage. This can be a time of productivity and satisfaction, though some people experience a midlife crisis as they reassess their lives and question whether they have achieved their goals. Research suggests that happiness follows a U-shaped curve across the lifespan, dipping in middle age before rising again in later life. Older adulthood challenges stereotypes about decline and diminishment. While some cognitive abilities like processing speed may slow with age, other capacities like wisdom and emotional regulation often improve. Older adults show better emotion regulation, greater acceptance, and often report higher life satisfaction than younger adults. The stereotype of inevitable cognitive decline is not supported by research. Many older adults maintain sharp minds into their 80s and beyond, particularly if they stay physically active, socially engaged, and intellectually stimulated. Cultural differences in human psychology reveal that while we share a common human nature, culture powerfully shapes how that nature is expressed. Individualistic cultures emphasize personal autonomy, self-expression, and individual achievement, while collectivist cultures emphasize group harmony, social obligation, and interdependence. These cultural differences influence everything from child-rearing practices to emotional expression to cognitive styles. Research on cultural psychology has demonstrated that even basic cognitive processes like attention and memory can be influenced by culture. People from Western cultures tend to focus on individual objects and their attributes, while people from East Asian cultures pay more attention to relationships and contexts. These differences appear not because one group is more intelligent, but because different cultural environments train attention in different ways. Emotion expression also varies across cultures. All humans experience similar basic emotions, but cultures differ in which emotions are encouraged or discouraged, how intensely they are expressed, and what situations elicit them. Some cultures value emotional restraint, while others encourage open expression. These cultural display rules shape not just outward behavior, but also inner experience, as people learn to feel emotions in culturally appropriate ways. The concept of self varies dramatically across cultures. Western cultures tend to emphasize an independent self, defined by internal attributes, personal preferences, and individual achievements. Many non-Western cultures emphasize an interdependent self, defined by social roles, relationships, and group memberships. These different self-construals lead to different motivations, values, and behaviors. Neither is more correct or advanced. They represent different solutions to the fundamental human need to understand who we are. Attachment theory provides insight into how early relationships shape later development. The quality of care an infant receives influences the attachment style they develop. Secure attachment, formed when caregivers are consistently responsive and sensitive, allows children to explore confidently, knowing they have a safe base to return to. Insecure attachment styles, formed when care is inconsistent or unresponsive, can lead to anxiety or avoidance in relationships that may persist into adulthood. These early attachment patterns are not destiny. While they influence later relationships, they can be revised through new experiences. Therapy, supportive relationships, and conscious self-reflection can help people develop more secure attachment styles, even if their early experiences were difficult. The brain remains plastic throughout life, and patterns formed in childhood can be reshaped, though change may require sustained effort. Trauma represents an extreme form of experience that can profoundly affect human psychology. When events overwhelm an individual's ability to cope, they can leave lasting marks on memory, emotion regulation, and stress response systems. Traumatic memories may be intrusive and fragmented, lacking the narrative structure of ordinary autobiographical memory. The body itself may hold trauma, with chronic tension, hypervigilance, or numbing serving as somatic reminders of past overwhelming experiences. Recovery from trauma often requires creating new meaning from overwhelming experiences, integrating fragmented memories into coherent narratives, and building safety and trust in relationships. Various therapeutic approaches, including cognitive processing therapy, exposure therapy, and trauma-focused therapies, help people process traumatic experiences and reclaim their lives. The capacity for healing and post-traumatic growth demonstrates the remarkable resilience of human beings. The human brain exhibits remarkable plasticity, the ability to reorganize and form new connections throughout life. This neuroplasticity underlies learning, memory formation, and recovery from brain injury. When one region of the brain is damaged, other regions can sometimes compensate, taking over lost functions. When we learn new skills, new neural pathways form and strengthen. The old saying that you cannot teach an old dog new tricks simply is not true for humans. We retain capacity for learning and growth throughout the lifespan. Sleep and rest are essential for human functioning, though modern societies often treat them as optional luxuries. During sleep, the brain consolidates memories, clears metabolic waste, and carries out essential maintenance. Chronic sleep deprivation impairs cognitive function, emotional regulation, and physical health. Dreams, which occur primarily during rapid eye movement sleep, may serve to integrate emotional experiences and maintain neural networks. The functions of dreaming remain somewhat mysterious, but its universal occurrence across human cultures suggests it serves important purposes. Stress represents another fundamental aspect of human experience. In small doses, stress can be motivating, enhancing performance and focus. This is the arousal we feel before important events, the heightened alertness that helps us meet challenges. But chronic stress takes a toll on both mind and body. Prolonged activation of stress hormones like cortisol can impair immune function, increase inflammation, interfere with sleep, and contribute to anxiety and depression. Different people have different stress responses, partly due to genetics and partly due to life experience. Some individuals seem naturally resilient, bouncing back from setbacks with relative ease. Others are more sensitive to stress and require more support to cope. Learning healthy stress management techniques, including exercise, social support, relaxation practices, and cognitive reframing, can help protect against the harmful effects of chronic stress. The human capacity for growth and change should never be underestimated. People can overcome difficult pasts, learn new skills, change ingrained habits, and develop greater wisdom and compassion throughout their lives. This potential for transformation is both humbling and inspiring. We are not fixed entities, but ongoing processes, always becoming, never fully finished. Spirituality and meaning-making represent another dimension of human experience. While not all people are religious, most humans seem to seek some sense of transcendence, connection to something larger than themselves. This may take the form of traditional religious practice, secular spirituality, connection with nature, devotion to causes, or experiences of awe and wonder. These experiences seem to fulfill deep psychological needs for meaning, belonging, and perspective. Awe, the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends our ordinary understanding, has been shown to have positive psychological effects. Experiencing awe shifts attention away from the self toward the larger world, fostering humility and connection. Natural environments often evoke awe, as do great works of art, music that moves us, or moments of insight. Cultivating opportunities for awe may contribute to well-being and a sense of meaning. Creativity represents yet another distinctive feature of human cognition. While problem-solving involves finding solutions to defined problems, creativity involves generating novel and valuable ideas. Creative thinking requires divergent thinking, the ability to generate multiple solutions rather than converging on a single answer. It often involves connecting ideas from different domains in unexpected ways. Creative people tend to be open to experience, willing to take risks, and able to tolerate ambiguity. They often alternate between periods of intensive, focused work and periods of mind-wandering or incubation, allowing unconscious processes to work on problems. Creativity is not limited to the arts. Scientists, mathematicians, entrepreneurs, and people in all walks of life can think creatively when they generate novel solutions to challenges. Play, often dismissed as mere frivolity, serves important functions throughout the lifespan. Children's play helps them learn social skills, practice problem-solving, and explore their physical and social worlds. Adult play, whether through games, sports, hobbies, or humor, provides relief from stress, opportunities for connection, and chances for creative expression. Societies that preserve space for play and leisure tend to have happier, healthier citizens. Humor itself is a uniquely human capacity that serves social bonding functions. Laughter is contagious, spreading through groups and creating shared, positive emotion. Humor can diffuse tension, signal affiliation, and allow us to discuss difficult topics indirectly. The ability to find humor, even in adversity, can be a sign of resilience and a way of maintaining perspective during challenging times. The human relationship with nature has evolved dramatically over the course of our species' history. For most of human existence, people lived in close contact with the natural world, depending directly on plants and animals for survival. Modern urban life has created unprecedented separation from natural environments for many people. Some researchers suggest this disconnection from nature may contribute to various psychological and physical health problems. Research on nature exposure suggests that time spent in natural environments has restorative effects, attention, reduces stress, and enhances mood. Even brief walks in parks or views of natural scenes can provide psychological benefits. This suggests that human psychology may be adapted to natural environments, and that the novel urban environments most people now inhabit may not fully meet our psychological needs. Values represent another important aspect of human psychology. While different individuals and cultures emphasize different values, research has identified several universal value domains. Security, safety, and stability are valued by most humans. Benevolence and care for close others is nearly universal. Achievement and competence are widely valued, though to varying degrees. Stimulation and novelty are valued by some more than others. Self-direction and autonomy are important in many, though not all, cultures. These values guide our decisions, shape our identities, and provide standards for evaluating ourselves and others. Values conflicts create some of the most difficult dilemmas humans face, when we must choose between competing goods. Should we prioritize individual freedom or collective security? Personal success or family obligation? Truth or compassion? These questions have no easy answers, and different people will answer differently based on their value priorities. Moral psychology examines how humans develop moral understanding and make ethical decisions. Young children begin with simple notions of fairness centered on equal treatment. As they develop, their moral reasoning becomes more sophisticated, incorporating principles of justice, rights, care, and harm. Different moral foundations may be emphasized by different cultures and political groups. Understanding moral diversity can foster greater tolerance even when we disagree with others' moral conclusions. Prejudice and discrimination represent some of the darkest aspects of human psychology. Despite our capacity for empathy and cooperation, humans also show disturbing tendencies toward in-group favoritism and out-group hostility. These biases likely evolved in environments where intergroup competition was common, but they cause immense suffering in the modern world. Recognizing that we all harbor implicit biases, associations that operate automatically outside conscious awareness, is an important step toward reducing discrimination. Forgiveness represents a powerful human capacity for healing relationships and moving beyond past hurts. Holding grudges and ruminating on offenses harms the person who cannot let go as much or more than the original offender. Forgiveness does not mean excusing harm or reconciling with dangerous people. Rather, it means releasing the grip of past pain, choosing not to be defined by what was done to you. Research shows that people who are able to forgive experience better mental and physical health. Hope, the belief that desired outcomes are possible and that one has some agency in bringing them about, emerges as a crucial psychological finding. Resource. People who maintain hope in the face of difficulty are more likely to persevere through challenges and achieve their goals. Hope is not naive optimism that ignores reality. Rather, it is a stance toward the future that acknowledges obstacles while maintaining belief in the possibility of positive change. Wisdom, often associated with older age but not guaranteed by it, involves the integration of cognitive, emotional, and practical capacities. Wise individuals show good judgment, perspective on life's challenges, concern for others, and awareness of complexity and uncertainty. Wisdom is not the same as intelligence. It involves emotional maturity, life experience, and often a degree of humility about the limits of one's knowledge. The examined life remains worth pursuing. Self-understanding, while never complete, allows us to make more conscious choices, to respond rather than merely react, to align our actions with our values. Understanding the general features of human psychology can help us understand ourselves and others with greater compassion and insight. As we come to the end of this gentle exploration, remember that understanding humans is not about memorizing facts or theories. It is about cultivating curiosity and compassion toward the strange and wonderful creatures that we are. We are biological beings shaped by millions of years of evolution, and also cultural beings shaped by the particular time and place we inhabit. We are rational and irrational, selfish and altruistic, finite and dreaming of infinity. The human story is still being written. We face challenges our ancestors could never have imagined, but we also possess tools and knowledge they could never have dreamed of. By understanding our own nature more fully, its possibilities and its limitations, we can perhaps navigate our collective future more wisely. But let us continue this gentle journey a while longer, exploring more of what makes us distinctively human before we surrender to sleep. Communication in humans extends far beyond spoken words. Our bodies speak a language all their own, one that often reveals more than our carefully chosen phrases. Facial expressions convey emotion with remarkable precision. A genuine smile engages muscles around the eyes that voluntary smiles cannot easily fake. Micro-expressions, fleeting facial movements lasting just fractions of a second, can betray feelings we consciously try to hide. Our ancestors needed to read these subtle cues to navigate social hierarchies and assess trustworthiness. And we retain this exquisite sensitivity to non-verbal signals. Posture and gesture carry meaning across cultures, though the specific meanings vary. Open body language, with uncrossed arms and relaxed shoulders, generally signals receptiveness and comfort. Closed postures may indicate defensiveness or discomfort. We unconsciously mirror the body language of people we like or wish to connect with, a phenomenon called the chameleon effect. This automatic mimicry helps build rapport and signals affiliation. Eye contact patterns differ across cultures, but universally play important roles in communication. In many Western cultures, steady eye contact signals honesty and confidence, while avoiding gaze may suggest deception or shame. In other cultures, prolonged direct eye contact can be considered aggressive or disrespectful, particularly between people of different social status. These cultural variations remind us that much of what seems natural about human behavior is actually culturally constructed. Touch represents one of the most primal forms of human connection. Infants who receive inadequate physical contact fail to thrive, even when their other needs are met. Throughout life, touch communicates care, comfort, and belonging. Different relationships have different touch norms, carefully calibrated to signal intimacy level. Casual acquaintances might shake hands, close friends might hug, romantic partners engage in more extensive touching. Violations of these unspoken rules can cause profound discomfort, demonstrating how precisely calibrated our expectations about touch really are. The human voice carries layers of information beyond the literal meaning of words. Tone, pitch, pace, and volume all convey emotional content and relational messages. Sarcasm relies entirely on vocal inflection to invert literal meaning. We can detect subtle variations in voice that signal confidence, fear, attraction, or deception. Infants respond to the melodic qualities of speech before they understand words, and parents everywhere instinctively use exaggerated intonation when speaking to babies, a pattern called motherese that appears across cultures. Music represents a universal human phenomenon, found in every culture ever studied. While musical styles vary enormously, all human societies create rhythmic and melodic patterns for aesthetic and social purposes. Music appears to serve multiple functions, including emotional expression, social bonding, and coordination of group activities. Lullabies soothe infants to sleep. Work songs coordinate rhythmic labor. Dance music brings communities together in shared movement. The neural basis of music appreciation reveals fascinating overlaps with other capacities. Music processing involves many of the same brain regions as language, emotion, and motor control. This may explain why music can move us so profoundly, why it can evoke vivid memories and intense feelings, why it makes us want to move our bodies. Music seems to tap into multiple neural systems simultaneously, creating rich, multisensory experiences. Perfect pitch, the ability to identify or produce specific musical notes without reference tones, demonstrates how developmental timing shapes human abilities. Nearly everyone is born with the potential for perfect pitch, but this ability requires exposure to music during a critical period in early childhood to develop. After this window closes, perfect pitch becomes virtually impossible to acquire. This pattern appears throughout human development. Certain capacities must be exercised during sensitive periods, or they remain dormant. Language learning provides another example of critical periods in development. Children exposed to language from birth acquire it effortlessly and achieve native fluency. Children first exposed to language after early childhood can learn to communicate, but typically never achieve the same intuitive mastery. The same pattern holds for second language learning. Children can become truly bilingual with native accents in both languages. Adults learning new languages typically retain accents and make grammatical errors that native speakers never make. These critical periods reflect the brain's changing plasticity across development. The young brain is maximally flexible, able to be shaped by experience in profound ways. This flexibility gradually decreases with age as neural circuits become more fixed. The trade-off is that while young brains learn rapidly, they are also more vulnerable to damage. The increasing stability of adult brains means they are more resilient but less adaptable. Bilingualism offers a fascinating window into human cognitive flexibility. People who grow up speaking multiple languages show advantages in certain executive functions, particularly the ability to switch between tasks and inhibit irrelevant information. Managing multiple linguistic systems seems to exercise mental control processes that benefit other domains. Bilingual individuals must constantly suppress one language while using the other, and this practice appears to strengthen cognitive control networks. Code switching, the practice of alternating between languages within conversations, demonstrates the sophisticated coordination bilingual brains achieve. Bilinguals seamlessly switch languages based on context, audience, and topic, often without conscious awareness. They might use one language at work and another at home, or switch mid-conversation when the topic changes. This fluid movement between linguistic systems shows how cultural tools become deeply integrated with cognitive processes. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, also known as linguistic relativity, proposes that the language we speak shapes how we think about the world. Strong versions of this hypothesis, suggesting language determines thought, have been largely rejected, but weaker versions find empirical support. Language does influence attention, memory, and conceptual categories in subtle ways. For example, languages differ in how they carve up the color spectrum into named categories. Speakers of languages with many color words show better memory for subtle color distinctions than speakers of languages with fewer color terms. Grammatical gender provides another example of linguistic influence on thought. Languages that assign gender to nouns can influence how speakers think about those objects. In languages where bridges are feminine, people describe bridges using more stereotypically feminine adjectives. In languages where bridges are masculine, descriptions shift accordingly. These effects are subtle and appear primarily in implicit measures, but they demonstrate that linguistic structures can subtly color perception and thought. Time conceptualization varies across languages in interesting ways. English speakers tend to think of time horizontally, with past behind and future ahead. Mandarin speakers may think of time vertically, with earlier times above and later times below. The Aymara language places the past in front and future behind, reasoning that we can see what has already happened, but cannot see what lies ahead. These linguistic differences correlate with differences in how speakers gesture about time and perform cognitive tasks involving temporal reasoning. Metaphor pervades human language and thought far more than we typically realize. We routinely use spatial metaphors for abstract concepts. We feel up or down. Relationships are warm or cold. Arguments have weight. These are not mere figures of speech, but reflect how our brains understand abstract concepts through mappings to concrete physical experiences. Understanding metaphor requires recognizing these systematic correspondences between domains. Human imagination allows us to transcend immediate experience in remarkable ways. We can envision worlds that never existed, contemplate hypothetical scenarios, and create fictional narratives. This capacity for mental simulation serves many functions. It allows us to plan ahead by previewing possible futures. It enables learning from others' experiences by imagining ourselves in their situations. It provides entertainment and meaning through stories. It may even be essential for moral reasoning, as we imagine how our actions might affect others. Fiction reading appears to enhance social cognition. People who read literary fiction, which focuses on characters' internal mental states, show improved performance on tasks measuring empathy and theory of mind. This suggests that the practice of entering fictional minds strengthens our ability to understand real minds. Stories have been called a flight simulator for social life, allowing us to practice navigating social situations in the safe space of imagination. Narrative itself seems to be a fundamental mode of human thought. We naturally organize experience into stories with characters, goals, obstacles, and resolutions. When asked to describe ourselves or explain our choices, we tell stories that give coherence and meaning to disconnected events. These personal narratives shape identity. We become, in a sense, the stories we tell about ourselves. Therapeutic approaches that help people revise their personal narratives can lead to profound changes in well-being and behavior. Pattern recognition represents another powerful human cognitive capacity. We are exceptionally good at detecting regularities and extracting rules from experience. This ability underlies much of learning, from acquiring language grammar to mastering complex skills. But our pattern detection machinery sometimes overperforms, finding patterns in random noise. We see faces in clouds, hear messages in static, detect conspiracies in coincidences. This tendency toward false positives was probably adaptive for our ancestors. Better to mistake a shadow for a predator than to miss an actual threat. Superstition arises from this sensitive pattern detection, combined with our need for control. When people experience random reinforcement, where rewards occur unpredictably, they often develop superstitious behaviors, repeating actions that coincidentally preceded positive outcomes. Athletes develop elaborate pre-game rituals. Gamblers develop lucky strategies. These behaviors persist because intermittent reinforcement, where the behavior is sometimes rewarded, is extremely resistant to extinction. Magical thinking, the belief that thoughts can directly influence events or that symbolic actions have real effects, appears across cultures and persists even in scientifically literate populations. Knocking on wood, avoiding unlucky numbers, keeping lucky charms. These practices provide illusory feelings of control in uncertain situations. Even people who intellectually reject such beliefs often find themselves engaging in superstitious behaviors when stakes are high. Cognitive dissonance describes the uncomfortable tension we feel when holding contradictory beliefs or when our actions conflict with our values. Rather than tolerating this discomfort, we tend to rationalize away contradictions. If we behave in ways inconsistent with our self-image, we may change our attitudes to match our behavior, rather than admitting we acted inconsistently. This psychological maneuver preserves self-esteem, but can lead us astray, as we convince ourselves that questionable actions were actually justified. Self-serving biases systematically distort how we interpret our successes and failures. We tend to attribute positive outcomes to our own abilities and efforts, while attributing negative outcomes to external circumstances or bad luck. This bias protects self-esteem, but can interfere with learning from mistakes. People who are too quick to blame circumstances never develop insight into their own role in negative outcomes. The fundamental attribution error describes our tendency to overestimate personality factors and underestimate situational factors when explaining others' behavior. If someone cuts us off in traffic, we assume they are rude, rather than considering they might be rushing to an emergency. If someone fails a test, we assume they lack intelligence, rather than considering they might have been ill. We see others' behavior as revealing their character, while viewing our own behavior as shaped by circumstances. Actor-observer asymmetry captures related bias. We explain our own behavior in terms of situations, but others' behavior in terms of dispositions. When I arrive late, it was because of traffic. When you arrive late, it reveals your poor time management. This asymmetry likely arises because we have access to our own situational pressures and constraints, but can only observe others' behavior without full knowledge of their circumstances. False consensus effect describes our tendency to overestimate how much others share our beliefs and preferences. We assume our own views are typical and that people who disagree are unusual or biased. This bias can fuel polarization as we surround ourselves with like-minded others and come to view the opposing position as fringe, rather than recognizing that reasonable people can disagree. Hindsight bias, the tendency to believe after learning an outcome that we would have predicted it in advance, distorts our understanding of the past. Once we know how things turned out, that outcome seems inevitable, and alternative outcomes become hard to imagine. This bias makes us overconfident in our predictive abilities and too harsh in judging others whose predictions proved wrong. In hindsight, mistakes seem obvious, but in the moment, the correct course was far from clear. Planning fallacy describes our systematic tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take and overestimate what we can accomplish in a given time. We focus on ideal scenarios where everything goes smoothly and fail to account for inevitable obstacles and delays. This optimistic bias persists even when we have extensive experience demonstrating that our predictions are unrealistic. Better planning involves explicitly considering what could go wrong and building in buffers for likely complications. Motivated reasoning describes how our desires and goals shape our reasoning processes. We scrutinize evidence that contradicts our preferences, while uncritically accepting evidence that supports them. We generate more arguments for positions we favor and set higher standards for positions we oppose. This bias means that intelligence and analytical ability do not guarantee objectivity. Smart people are often just better at constructing sophisticated justifications for what they already wanted to believe. Curiosity represents a powerful intrinsic motivation in humans. Children are naturally curious, constantly asking why and exploring their environments. This drive to learn and understand seems to be innately rewarding. The brain's reward systems activate when we gain new information or solve puzzles, even when there are no external incentives. Environments that stifle curiosity through excessive control or criticism can dampen this natural drive, while environments that support autonomy and exploration foster its development. Flow states describe experiences of complete absorption in challenging activities that match our skill level. When difficulty is too low relative to skill, we become bored. When too high, we become anxious. But in that sweet spot where challenge and skill are balanced, we can enter flow, losing self-consciousness and time awareness in focused engagement. Flow experiences are intrinsically rewarding and contribute to well-being. Designing activities and environments to facilitate flow can enhance quality of life. Procrastination afflicts nearly everyone to some degree. We delay starting important tasks, even when we know delay will cost us. This seemingly irrational behavior makes sense when we understand that humans discount future consequences relative to immediate ones. The present pain of starting an unpleasant task weighs more heavily than the future pain of negative consequences. Strategies for overcoming procrastination involve making the immediate costs of delay more salient, or the immediate benefits of progress more rewarding. Habit formation is governed by powerful neural mechanisms that operate largely outside conscious awareness. When we repeat behaviors in consistent contexts, they become automatic, triggered by environmental cues without requiring deliberate intention. This automaticity conserves mental resources, allowing us to perform routine actions while thinking about other things. But habits can be hard to break, precisely because they bypass conscious control. Changing habits requires not just willpower, but restructuring environments to eliminate triggers and establish new routines. Addiction represents an extreme form of compulsive behavior, where substances or activities hijack the brain's reward systems. Addictive substances increase dopamine signaling beyond natural levels, training the brain to prioritize drug seeking above other rewards. With repeated use, tolerance develops, requiring increasing amounts to achieve the same effects, while withdrawal symptoms make stopping painful. Addiction also involves learned associations between environmental cues and drug use, so that places, people, or situations trigger intense cravings. Recovery from addiction often requires not just abstinence, but restructuring one's life to avoid triggers, developing new coping strategies for stress, and rebuilding social connections. The high relapse rates in addiction reflect how deeply ingrained these patterns become and how challenging change is. But recovery is possible, and understanding addiction as a disorder of brain circuitry rather than a moral failing helps reduce stigma and promote evidence-based treatment. Mental health conditions affect a substantial portion of the human population. Anxiety disorders involve excessive fear and worry that interferes with daily functioning. Mood disorders like depression involve persistent sadness, loss of interest, and cognitive symptoms. Psychotic disorders involve distortions in perception and thinking. These conditions have biological bases in brain chemistry and circuitry, but are also influenced by stress, trauma, and life circumstances. The boundary between normal human experience and mental disorder is not always clear. Most people experience periods of sadness, anxiety, or unusual thoughts. Mental disorders represent the extreme end of spectrums that include normal variation. Diagnosis considers not just symptom presence, but severity, duration, and functional impairment. This dimensional view recognizes that mental health exists on a continuum rather than as a binary of sick versus healthy. Stigma surrounding mental health conditions causes immense suffering beyond the conditions themselves. People with mental health issues face discrimination, social isolation, and internalized shame. They may delay seeking treatment or hide their struggles. Reducing stigma requires education, emphasizing that mental health conditions are medical problems deserving of treatment and compassion, rather than moral failings deserving of judgment. Treatment for mental health conditions has advanced dramatically. Psychotherapy provides structured ways to examine thoughts, process emotions, and develop coping skills. Medications can correct chemical imbalances contributing to symptoms. Lifestyle interventions, including exercise, sleep hygiene, and stress management, support mental health. The most effective approach often combines multiple interventions tailored to individual needs. Neuroplasticity means that brains can change, even in the context of mental health conditions. Therapy and medication can alter neural circuits, reducing symptoms and improving functioning. Recovery from mental health conditions is not always linear, but most people improve with appropriate treatment. Understanding that change is possible at the neural level provides hope and motivation for engaging in treatment. Aging brings changes to the brain and cognition, but the stereotypical image of inevitable decline is overdrawn. Some abilities do decline with age. Processing speed slows, making it harder to quickly master new information. Working memory capacity may decrease somewhat. Episodic memory, the ability to remember specific events, often declines more than semantic memory, general knowledge about the world. But other cognitive abilities remain stable or even improve. Vocabulary typically continues increasing throughout life. Emotional regulation often improves. Wisdom, as mentioned earlier, can develop with age. Older adults show selectivity in what they attend to, focusing more on positive information and less on negative, a shift that may contribute to improved emotional well-being. The concept of cognitive reserve suggests that mental stimulation throughout life builds resilience against age-related decline. People who engage in intellectually demanding work, maintain active social lives, continue learning, and challenge themselves mentally show less cognitive decline than those who lead less engaged lives. The brain is like a muscle that benefits from exercise throughout the lifespan. Physical health profoundly affects cognitive aging. Cardiovascular health, which ensures adequate blood flow to the brain, is crucial. Exercise benefits the brain directly by promoting neuroplasticity and reducing inflammation. Sleep quality, stress management, and nutrition all influence how the brain ages. The good news is that many factors affecting cognitive aging are modifiable through lifestyle choices. Social connection remains important throughout life, but may become even more crucial in older adulthood. Loneliness and social isolation are risk factors for cognitive decline and mortality in older adults. Maintaining friendships, staying involved in communities, and cultivating intergenerational relationships support healthy aging. Retirement can be a time of loss if it severs important social ties, but it can also provide opportunities for deeper engagement with relationships and meaningful activities. Purpose and meaning appear to support healthy aging. Older adults who feel their lives have meaning and that they have contributions to make show better physical and cognitive health. This may operate through multiple pathways, including reduced stress, healthier behaviors, and greater motivation to engage with life. Helping older adults find or maintain purpose may be as important for health as any medical intervention. End of life confronts all humans with the ultimate existential challenge. Different cultures and individuals approach this reality in different ways, but universal themes emerge. Most people hope for a peaceful passing, preferably in the company of loved ones, with pain and suffering minimized. They hope to feel their lives mattered, to have reconciled important relationships, to leave something of value behind. Grief is the price we pay for love, the natural response to losing someone important. It is not a disorder to be cured, but a process to be supported. Grief does not follow neat stages despite popular beliefs. It comes in waves, intense at first, gradually becoming less frequent and overwhelming, but capable of surging unexpectedly even years later. The goal is not to get over loss, but to integrate it into our continuing lives. Legacy concerns often become important as people age. What will we leave behind? How will we be remembered? These questions reflect our need to feel that our brief existence mattered, that we contributed something, however small, to the ongoing human story. Legacy can take many forms, including children and grandchildren, creative works, contributions to communities, influences on students or colleagues, or simply the memory of kindness and love in the hearts of those who knew us. The human capacity for finding meaning, even in suffering, speaks to our remarkable resilience. Humans can endure any suffering if they can find meaning in it. This insight has profound implications. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we maintain some freedom in how we respond, what meaning we make, what stance we take toward our circumstances. Acceptance does not mean resignation or giving up. Rather, it means acknowledging reality as it is, while continuing to work toward what can be changed. The Serenity Prayer captures this wisdom, asking for serenity to accept what cannot be changed, courage to change what can be changed, and wisdom to know the difference. This balance between acceptance and agency characterizes psychological health. Growth often emerges from adversity, though this should never minimize suffering or suggest that trauma is somehow good. But many people who survive difficult experiences report post-traumatic growth, positive changes in self-perception, relationships, and life philosophy. They feel stronger, more appreciative of life, more authentic in relationships. This growth does not erase the pain or make suffering worthwhile, but it demonstrates that humans can sometimes transmute even terrible experiences into sources of meaning and wisdom. Gratitude practices involve deliberately noticing and appreciating positive aspects of life. Research shows that people who regularly reflect on what they are grateful for experience enhanced well-being, improved relationships, and better physical health. Gratitude seems to work by redirecting attention from what is lacking toward what is present, from problems toward gifts, from taking things for granted toward recognizing their value. Kindness benefits both giver and receiver. Acts of kindness activate reward centers in the brain, creating what researchers call a helper's high. People who regularly engage in kind acts report higher life satisfaction. Kindness also strengthens social bonds and creates upward spirals where kindness begets more kindness. In a world that can feel harsh and competitive, deliberately choosing kindness can be a radical act. Compassion extends beyond kindness to include recognition of suffering and desire to alleviate it. Compassion for others draws on our empathic abilities, but also requires wisdom to know how to help effectively. Sometimes compassion means active intervention, but sometimes it means simply bearing witness to another's pain, offering presence without trying to fix things. Compassion for ourselves, extending the same care to our own suffering that we would offer a dear friend, can be surprisingly difficult, but is essential for well-being. Authenticity involves living in alignment with our true values and sense of self, rather than performing roles designed to please others or meet external expectations. While complete authenticity is probably impossible in social life, which requires some degree of self-presentation management, people who feel they can be themselves in important relationships report greater life satisfaction. The opposite of authenticity, feeling that we must hide our true selves, creates exhausting emotional labor and disconnection. Vulnerability, the willingness to be seen without guarantees of acceptance, is essential for deep connection. True intimacy requires lowering defenses and sharing our authentic selves, imperfections and all. This involves risk. We might be rejected or hurt. But without vulnerability, relationships remain superficial. The courage to be vulnerable, to risk being truly known, allows for the profound connections that make life meaningful. Loneliness in modern societies has reached epidemic levels, despite unprecedented connectivity through technology. Social media provides the illusion of connection, while often deepening feelings of isolation. Seeing curated highlights of others' lives can increase social comparison and inadequacy. Digital communication lacks the rich non-verbal cues and physical presence that characterize face-to-face interaction. Screen time may be displacing the in-person socializing that most reliably satisfies our need for connection. Community involvement provides structure for social connection, while also contributing to something larger than ourselves. Religious congregations, volunteer organizations, clubs, and neighborhood groups all provide opportunities to connect with others around shared purposes. People embedded in communities show better mental and physical health than isolated individuals. As traditional community structures have weakened in modern societies, finding and creating community requires more deliberate effort. Environmental factors shape human psychology in ways we are only beginning to understand. Access to nature, exposure to green spaces, and contact with other species all influence well-being. Urban environments with high density, noise, and pollution create chronic stress. Poverty exposes people to numerous stressors, while limiting access to resources that buffer stress. Environmental justice recognizes that vulnerable populations often bear disproportionate environmental burdens. Climate change represents an existential threat that tests human psychology in unprecedented ways. The problem is vast, abstract, and slow-moving, making it hard for minds evolved to respond to immediate, concrete threats. Responsibility is diffused across billions of people, creating coordination challenges. The solutions require sacrificing present comforts for future benefits, working against our tendency to discount future consequences. Addressing climate change requires overcoming multiple psychological barriers and coordinating collective action at a global scale. Hope in the face of large-scale challenges like climate change must be grounded in action, rather than passive optimism. Hope means believing that efforts matter, that positive change is possible, that the future remains open. Despair paralyzes action. Denying problems also prevents action. Hope holds space for both acknowledging the severity of challenges and believing in human capacity to address them. Human nature includes capacity for both great harm and great good. We are capable of cruelty, violence, and indifference, but also of heroism, sacrifice, and boundless compassion. Which potentials we actualize depends on circumstances, culture, and choices. Understanding human psychology means acknowledging the full range of what we can become. Education shapes human development in profound ways. Formal schooling transmits knowledge, but also socializes children into cultural norms, teaches discipline and cooperation, and sorts individuals into social positions. The quality of education children receive profoundly affects life outcomes. Access to good schools remains unequal, with disadvantaged children attending under-resourced schools, perpetuating inequality across generations. Learning styles differ among individuals, though popular theories about distinct learning styles lack strong empirical support. While people have preferences for how information is presented, most benefit from multimodal instruction that engages visual, auditory, and kinesthetic channels. Active learning, where students engage with material rather than passively receiving it, promotes deeper understanding. Spaced practice, spreading learning over time rather than cramming, improves retention. Expertise requires extensive, deliberate practice, not just time. 10,000 hours has become a popular benchmark, but the quality of practice matters more than quantity. Experts engage in focused practice, targeting specific weaknesses, seek feedback, and continually push beyond their comfort zones. Natural talent provides a head start, but sustained effort and effective practice methods determine who reaches the highest levels of performance. Mastery orientation involves focusing on learning and improvement rather than on proving ability or outperforming others. People with mastery orientation see challenges as opportunities to learn rather than threats to their ego. They persist through difficulties and seek out feedback. In contrast, performance orientation focuses on displaying competence and outperforming others. While this can motivate achievement, it also makes people vulnerable to defensive behaviors when they encounter challenges. Growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through effort, promotes resilience and achievement. Compared to fixed mindset, the belief that abilities are innate and unchangeable. People with growth mindsets see effort as valuable and setbacks as informative. Those with fixed mindsets see effort as evidence of inadequacy and avoid challenges that might reveal limitations. While both mindsets oversimplify the complex interplay of genetics and environment in determining abilities, adopting a growth orientation tends to promote beneficial behaviors. Imposter syndrome describes the experience of feeling fraudulent despite objective evidence of competence. High achievers often struggle with imposter feelings, attributing success to luck or external factors rather than their own abilities. This syndrome is especially common among members of groups that face stereotypes about their own abilities. Understanding that many successful people experience these feelings can reduce their power. Stereotype threat describes how awareness of negative stereotypes about one's group can impair performance. When women take math tests after being reminded of stereotypes about women's math ability, their performance suffers compared to when stereotypes are not activated. The same pattern appears for any group facing negative stereotypes in particular domains. The mechanism involves anxiety and cognitive load, as concerns about confirming stereotypes consume mental resources needed for the task. So rest now, letting these thoughts settle gently like falling snow. You do not need to remember everything. Let the details fade as you sink deeper into comfort. The important things will remain with you, not as specific facts, but as a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. You have done enough for today. You have listened, you have considered, you have opened your mind to new understanding. And now it is time to let go. Let your thoughts grow quiet. Let your body grow heavy and still. Let sleep come naturally, in its own time, carrying you gently into the night. You are part of the great human family, connected to billions of others across the globe and to countless generations who came before. You are unique and also utterly typical, a distinctive expression of our shared human nature. And right now, in this moment, all you need to do is rest. Close your eyes if you have not already. Feel the weight of your body supported by whatever surface holds you. Notice your breath moving gently in and out, requiring no effort, no thought. You are safe. You are allowed to rest. Understanding can wait for another day. The mysteries of human nature will still be here tomorrow. The questions will remain. But right now, there is only this moment, this breath, this gentle descent into sleep. Let yourself fall softly, peacefully, completely. Let understanding give way to rest. Let thought give way to quiet. Let the day release you into the night. Sleep well, dear listener. Dream gently, and know that in your sleeping and your waking, you are wonderfully, beautifully, perfectly human. Good night.